I'm a big fan of Jane Austen. And like many people, one of my favourite books of hers is Pride and Prejudice. And I've been rereading it recently. And suddenly, I began to wonder whether Jane Austen really doesn't like mothers. Mrs. Bennet, the mother in Pride and Prejudice, just seems to be a terrible woman. She's really pushy and manipulative and won't listen to anyone else. Well, of course, what she's pushy about is trying to find all her five daughters husbands. And she wants them to find wealthy husbands because, as they have no sons, no brothers, um, the family estate will be passed out of the family to a local pastor who doesn't get much of a good press either. When you read Jane Austen, actually, some of the mothers do seem quite bad. But really, they're just reflecting the desires of their daughters. Pride and Prejudice was written when Jane Austen was maybe in her late teens or early 20s, and there's a little bit of that adolescent tension about it. But all Jane Austen's heroines are looking for husbands, and pretty much all her books end when the heroines marry. So maybe poor Mrs. Bennet is just a scapegoat. Maybe Jane Austen's mothers are scapegoats for the desires of her daughters. Well, today we're thinking about St. James, and I wonder whether James and John's mum is just a scapegoat in our gospel reading today. You know, in Matthew's gospel, we have her, the unnamed her, as a pushy and manipulative mother who wants her sons to have all the glory. Mark's gospel omits the mother. In Mark's gospel, it's James and John themselves who ask. So whether Matthew is just trying to give them a bit of a way out of appearing quite so bad by blaming the mother, I'm not sure. James and John don't stop their mother from asking her big favour, which is, when you come into your kingdom, she says to Jesus, can my brothers sit one at your right hand and one at your left? Can they have the best places of honour? Now, James and John don't try and stop her at the very least. And of course, it annoys the other disciples. Though maybe they're just not annoyed at the idea that these two want the glory. Maybe they're just annoyed that they get in to ask for it first. Indeed, James and John may be following the example of Peter. It was Peter, James, and John, you remember, who were present at the Transfiguration, who saw Jesus up on that mountaintop, dazzling white, with Moses on one hand and Elijah on the other. And that may be the picture they're drawing on when they ask to hold those places themselves. But a few verses earlier, it's Peter who said to Jesus, we've given up everything to follow you. What are we going to get in return? Whatever's going on here, it's clear that the disciples are a long way from understanding the topsy-turvy world of the kingdom of God. Ambition can be noble. It may be that all the disciples are looking to glorify God through being having power or being glorious themselves, but they haven't understood that the root to this is servanthood. The word Matthew used for servant in this reading is deacon, diakonos, which is what we translate deacon. Indeed, minister comes from the Greek for minos. A minister is one who is less than, and all of us are Christian ministers. Jesus gives us our greatest example of service and suffering for others. But the disciples don't really understand the degree to which they're called to do the same until years after his death. And we have 2,000 years of Christian history, but still we can struggle with how power is found in weakness or glory in disgrace. Those aren't opposites, but the route to doing God's will. You know, it's not power that's the problem, it's how we get it and how we use it. Do we hold power over others, or do we hold power with them? In God's grace, suffering can be the path to glory, weakness, the path to strength, and all of them can be used in the service of His kingdom.